Hi, I'm Jessie Nebulous. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll be covering my top 5 tips for using colored pencils. Implement these and you'll be well on your way to increasing your skill with colored pencil. Most of these tips are aimed toward artists going for realism or semi-realism, but some apply to all colored pencil art. So strap in, grab a beverage of your choosing, hit the like button, and let's get into it. Number 1, keep your pencils sharp. This is because although your paper looks flat, it isn't. Its surface is covered with little dips and valleys, and your goal is to push the pigment into those valleys without damaging the paper by pressing too hard, which also ties into tip number 2, which we'll get to in a moment. You can't get the pigment into those little dips with a blunt pencil, so keep sharpening. A technique to not have to sharpen quite as often is to gradually rotate your pencil as you work so that you're always using the sharpest point. Tip number 2, light pressure. Those dips in the paper are called the tooth, and the lighter you keep your pressure, the more pigment you can get down into the tooth. This allows you to build up more layers, and layers are the name of the game in colored pencil. So keep your pressure light and you will be golden. If you have a heavy hand, it may help to hold your pencil further back like this. Tip number 3, work in circles. What do I mean by that? Instead of swinging your pencil back and forth, creating harsh start and stop lines, work in these little circles. It'll give you more even coverage without those start and stops, so you can get more even and beautiful blends. Tip number 4, build light to dark. This doesn't mean that you have to work from your lightest first up to your dark values last. I often start with my darkest values, to be honest. But what it does mean is that when you do want a dark value, build up from light to dark. If you want a dark green, don't just go in with it. Start with light green, then medium, then finally your dark. It builds depth, and if you're going for any sort of realism, depth is extremely important. If you go in with your dark pencil first, you're going to get a very flat result. And if that's what you're going for, hey, that's cool. But if you want realism and depth, build light to dark. Tip number 5, tone your black. Some people will tell you if you're going for any sort of realism to skip black entirely. I think it really depends on the project, and sometimes a little black, sparingly, is useful. But if you're going to use black, you need to tone it by going over it with another color. Which color depends on the piece, but definitely tone those blacks up. It's subtle, but it can really make a huge impact on your results. And if you're using black in your piece, but you think they're too flat, try using dark purples, browns, or blues instead, especially if you're aiming for hyper-realism. Bonus tip, shading in grounds. Have you hit that like button yet? Because I'm about to give you a bonus tip about shading objects and a dab of color theory. Not always, but most of the time, shadows are comprised of cooler colors like purples and blues. Cooler, darker colors will push a subject into the background, while warmer, brighter colors will bring it into the foreground. Color theory is a big, complex subject that is difficult to sum up in a few small tips, but in general, that's a pretty solid one. And if you keep it in mind, it'll help you to designate objects in the back and the foreground. Thanks for watching, and if this was in any way helpful, please leave me a like and subscribe. I'll be releasing videos at least every Sunday, usually more often, on art tips and time lapses of my original pieces. I'm Jessie Nebulous. Thanks again, and keep arting.